In 1999, Elon Musk launched his first startup. Zip2 was so broke he had to borrow $28,000 from his friend's parents. Despite being a failure, the company would be sold for $1 million and become the foundation of one of the largest companies in the world. But how did it all happen? Well, that's what we'll be answering today. The story starts with Elon moving to Silicon Valley and joining an existing startup called Zip2. But it wasn't quite what he thought it was going to be. In fact, the only thing he knew about the company before joining was its name. It was founded by two brothers named Peter Thiel and Luke Thiel. And at the time, they were developing software that would help connect businesses with local newspapers, magazines, and other publications. They already had some pretty big clients on board like New York Times and Knight Ridder. And when Elon joined, he was given the task of convincing more major publishers to use their platform. This wasn't easy by any means, since most of the executives at these publishing houses didn't even know what the internet was. So Elon took to the streets instead and visited them personally. It took a lot of effort, but eventually he got the results the company wanted. But the problem was that Zip2 wasn't really making much money despite having all of these huge clients. That's because their business model was severely flawed. Essentially, they weren't charging their clients directly. Instead, they were taking a commission on every transaction that happened through their platform. But there weren't many transactions to take commissions on in the first place. Since Zip2 didn't actually offer any services, all they did was connect businesses with publishers and then hope that something would eventually come out of it. This obviously wasn't sustainable. And by late 1998, Zip2 was starting to go bankrupt. Despite this, Elon decided to stick around and see if he could save the company. He started working on an entirely new product that would generate actual revenue. His idea was a business directory similar to what we have with Yelp today, except his version would also include a payment system so businesses could easily receive payments online. Around the same time, Elon also brought in another executive from his previous company, PayPal, named Max. Together, the trio started developing a large database of businesses and their information, which they hoped would be the backbone of their new venture. But in order to pull this off, they needed funding. So in early 1999, Elon went to a popular angel investor named Peter Thiel. He explained his idea for a business directory and asked for $20. Thiel liked the pitch and agreed to fund the project. However, he made one crucial stipulation. He didn't want Elon to work on two separate projects. If he wanted funding, he would have to abandon Zip2 and focus on the new venture. Elon agreed to these terms, and with $20,000 in hand, he set out to build a new business. It took a couple months, but eventually they finished development and launched the website in April of 1999. The response was not good. Only 4 businesses signed up in the entire month. Clearly, this wasn't going to work, so Elon tried pitching the product to more investors. Unfortunately, though, none of them were interested. Most of them thought the idea was too similar to existing business directories, and with not much traction to show, Elon wasn't able to raise any capital. He was now almost out of options. At this point, Elon decided to return to his previous job at PayPal. But he didn't just want to work for them. He wanted to buy them. You see, Elon never actually left PayPal when he went to work at Zip2. Instead, he simply became an employee of Zip2 while still retaining his position at PayPal. This gave him an advantage over the other employees, since he was privy to both PayPal's financial statements and strategy. And using this knowledge, he convinced PayPal's leadership team to merge Zip2 into the company. The combined entity would be called X.com. Elon was appointed chairman of the new company and received 17% ownership in exchange for merging his company into PayPal. While this was technically a merger, it was basically just PayPal buying out Zip2. But Elon was okay with that because now he had access to PayPal's massive war chest. Just a year prior, PayPal had gone public and raised $130 million. Now, Elon was planning to use some of that money to fund X.com, but PayPal's leadership team wasn't exactly thrilled about this idea. You see, from their perspective, PayPal was a stable and profitable business that wasn't in need of any risky ventures. On the other hand, X.com was basically just a risky venture, so it was only natural that they wouldn't be comfortable with throwing money at it. But Elon wasn't afraid to take on the risk. Instead of using PayPal's cash, Elon withdrew his own shares in the company and sold them. He then used this money to hire engineers and web developers and try and grow. X.com/things were moving along well until the dot-com crash hit in early 2000. Overnight, PayPal's stock price plummeted from $12 to just $4 per share. This meant Elon's stake in the company was now worth just $15 million. He had already lost millions from selling his shares, but now he was at risk of losing even more. PayPal's leadership team once again tried to convince Elon to abandon XCOM and focus on the main business. They probably thought that Elon would listen this time, but they were wrong. Elon had worked on XCOM for several years at this point, and he had no intention of giving up. He borrowed $10 million against his remaining shares in PayPal and used this money to grow XCOM even further. To make matters worse, one of Elon's co-founders, Max Levchin, left the company to pursue other opportunities, but Elon was determined to succeed. He continued to build out the platform and add new features. One of these features was a payment service that would allow users to send and receive money online. This was actually a pretty big deal at the time, since most people still didn't have access to online payment platforms. As you would guess, though PayPal wasn't thrilled about this either. From their perspective, Elon was building a direct competitor within their own platform. But Elon didn't care. He was committed to growing XCOM no matter the cost. Eventually, his efforts paid off, and XCOM started seeing some real traction. They didn't release any numbers, but it's safe to say that they were making enough money to be considered a viable business. But the problem was that their success came at a cost. PayPal's stock price had crashed from $12 to just $4 per share. Elon had already lost millions from selling his shares. As a result, he had no choice but to return to PayPal and strike a new deal. Once again, Elon pitched a merger between XCOM and PayPal, but this time he offered to buy out PayPal instead of the other way around. PayPal's leadership team agreed to this deal, but only on one condition. Elon would have to bring in an outsider to lead PayPal. This person would be none other than Peter Thiel. With that, Elon stepped down as CEO and handed the reins to Thiel. He then focused all of his efforts on growing XCOM. In the meantime, Thiel worked on integrating X.com into PayPal, but it quickly became clear that this wasn't going to be easy. For starters, XCOM was built from scratch with custom code and software. On the other hand, PayPal was built using a combination of third-party software and custom code. This meant that integrating the two systems would be extremely challenging. Also, XCOM had a very different culture than PayPal. XCOM was fast-paced and aggressive, while PayPal was more corporate and reserved. This cultural clash made it difficult for the two teams to work together. Despite these challenges, Thiel was determined to make the integration work. He spent countless hours working on the project, and eventually he was successful. By late 2000, XCOM had been fully integrated into PayPal. With that, PayPal became one of the largest online payment platforms in the world. But there was one major problem. You see, XCOM and PayPal each had their own online payment services. But now that they had merged, they needed to decide on one payment service. After much deliberation, they chose XCOM. This wasn't a big deal for customers since the transition was seamless. But it was a huge deal for Elon. You see, Elon had poured his heart and soul into building XCOM, and now he was essentially abandoning all of that work. To make matters worse, PayPal was now using his payment service without paying him any royalties. This was a bitter pill to swallow, but Elon didn't have a choice. He had agreed to merge his company into PayPal, and this was the natural outcome of that decision. PayPal offered him a seat on their board of directors, but Elon declined. He was done with PayPal and ready to move on to his next big idea. He was considering a few different ideas at the time, but nothing seemed to stick. So he decided to take a break and visit India. But this trip would change everything. When Elon arrived in India, he noticed that everyone was using mobile phones with SIM cards. At the time, this was still rare in the U.S., and Elon realized that there was a huge opportunity in the mobile payment space. He immediately started working on a new idea, and within a few weeks he had developed a new payment service called Square. But that's a story for another day. You see, while Elon was developing Square, he still owned a small percentage of PayPal. And in 2004, PayPal announced that they were acquiring a large payment platform called Braintree for $460 million. Elon was furious about this acquisition, since he believed that it was his idea that PayPal was stealing from him. He demanded that PayPal buy back his shares in the company, and after much negotiation, they agreed to pay him $180 million. With that, Elon officially cut ties with PayPal and set out to conquer the mobile payments industry. Looking back, it's clear that Elon's journey to success was anything but easy. But thankfully, we were able to shed some light on his journey today. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.